there's no coming back from this. We're done. I had known him since I was 13 years old. I met him when I was 13. We were married by the time I was 24, and we were divorced by the time I was 48. In a day, we were done. I was like, there's no way we're coming back from this.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our newest show here on the Financial Diet, Just Getting Good. This is a show that has been quite some time in the making and something that I have been really, really excited about, more excited than basically anything else I've done of late. Because as some of you might know, I made the choice quite some time ago to kind of exclusively follow influencers and women generally over a certain age on social media, because not only do I think we live in a ludicrously ageist society, as someone whose work has for so long been visible on the internet, I think that, you know, even just physically being visible to everyone makes you kind of naturally more susceptible to the downfalls of aging visibly and publicly. Not only are people very critical of your appearance, for example, but also so much of the value that we accord to people, especially women, in the public view is their youth. And I quite frankly think that people only get more interesting and more worth hearing from as they get older. I personally think I have many more interesting things to say at 36 than I did when I started the channel at 26, but that's neither here nor there. The concept, though, of Just Getting Good, which I so named it because I think for a lot of people generally and a lot of these women that I'm going to speak to, things are only just getting good at a much later age than many of the ages you guys are watching this show at, is just to sit down and speak with women over the age of 50. We're going to talk to women at all different ages. Some are just turning 50, some are well past their 50s, about life, love, money, aging, and everything that they have learned up to now. But again, to be clear, they are very much still in the process of learning, because guess what? Learning and growing never ends. And if it has, then that's a major, major problem. So each week in Just Getting Good, we are going to talk to a different woman about slightly different subjects, although I do have a list of rapid fire questions that I will be asking all of them at the end of the show to get their different takes on the same issue. We are kicking off the series by talking to a lovely woman named Anita, who at 55 years old is now a few years into retirement, and she has a very interesting story there, and who also left a marriage where there was gross financial infidelity, something that we've touched on before on the channel, but I think is a subject that is always worth exploring in depth. She has so many fascinating things to say on all of the subjects I mentioned before, and I think she is a perfect person to start off our series with. But before we sit down with Anita, I wanted to say a quick thank you to the sponsor and, in my opinion, perfect partner for this series, Advisor.com. So we partnered with Advisor.com to create Just Getting Good because, in addition to, I think, reframing how we think about aging, I think it's also very important to reframe how we think about taking care of our own financial lives and investing in our financial futures. A lot of us watching this are really wanting to step into kind of our grown woman era, both personally and financially. And for me at 36 years old, a big, big part of that financially was working with a financial advisor. Not only is it something really helpful for me, who as a person doesn't love getting super in the weeds of all of, the math and the calculations and, thinking about all of the minor details when it comes to money. I like being able to have sort of a trusted advisor to help me with that. But also I'm in the age where I'm going through a lot of major life choices, major purchases. I'm making big decisions about, saving, planning for my retirement, building wealth, all of that stuff. And to have a trusted professional who can help take me through all of those decisions and just provide sage advice, even for something as simple as like, the market is really scary, what is going on? I can call him and he can tell me. So working with a financial advisor has been life-changing for me, and one of the big things that sort of ushered me into what I feel like is a more grown woman era than I was in before. Not to say this is my final form, I will keep evolving, but I highly, highly endorse Advisor.com. We all do here at TFD. We've worked with their team for a very long time. They're a small boutique financial advisory that works on a flat fee basis, which means you pay the same regardless of how much money you have. And it also means their advisors work for you and not for commissions. They are a wonderful, very dedicated team. They operate in total transparency. They also offer an exclusive discount for TFD viewers, which you can access at the link in our description. And just generally, I think they are a wonderful financial advisory service, especially for people who are just starting their financial advisory journey, because again, that flat fee makes them a lot more accessible and more transparent than other financial advisories. So anyway, I highly endorse Advisor.com. As I said, there is an exclusive discount. And thank you to them for sponsoring this show, because I really do think think they're the perfect partner for the vibes of Just Getting Good. All right, I'll see you in our conversation. Anita, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
I'm kind of giddy, actually. I'm fangirling right now.
Well, as am I. I have to say, you were the first pre-interview I did when we were planning this show, and I was like, oh my God, we've struck a gold mine.
Thank you.
In terms of just having so many really interesting things to say. Now, to start us off, can you just kind of introduce yourself to our audience? Who are you? How old are you? Where do you live? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Anita. I am 55 and proud of every single year. I am not one of these people who is like, oh, you don't look 55. I was like, every damn year. Thank you very much. I will own it. So I live in New Jersey. I have lived in New Jersey, born and bred all my life. I tell people I went to college in California and ran right back home because I like turtlenecks and Four Seasons. I was married for 24 years, and then I've been divorced for about 7.
Okay.
And I have one son who is 25, and adulting. He's finding out adulting is hard.
Surely is.
Yes. So.
And you are retired.
I am.
Woo!
2 years in February.
Hell
Yes.
yeah. So you retired at 53, which is quite young.
Mhm.
Tell us how.
Well, you know what's interesting? When I tell people I'm retired, I get 2 questions consistently. 1, how did you do it? And 2, what do you do with all your free time? And how I did it, and it's really kind of, I started investing at 23, and I basically never stopped.
Ooh.
That's and the fun part about that is when there are 3 cousins in my family who are very close in age, and when we all graduated college at about the same time, and my uncle sat us down and said, girls, here's what you need to do. You all have your first job. Save as much for retirement as you can and figure out how to live off the rest. And that was the advice that he gave us because he didn't do that, and it put him behind the 8 ball for retirement. I actually, when he said that, I took his advice. And so when I started my first job out of college, I figured out what was the maximum I could contribute to my little 401k, and I figured out how to live off the rest. And literally that's what I've been doing. I took the little bit of margin I had between what I was making and my expenses, and a lot of it I let time do a lot of that heavy lifting because, time on margins that aren't that big can do magnificent things.
True that. Wait, but what's the answer to the other question? What do you do with your time?
Oh, God. First of all, I don't set an alarm. Unless there's a flight involved. I actually, when I got divorced, I was tired. I was probably broken in a lot of ways. I no longer knew myself. I had sacrificed so much to try and do the things that I thought that I needed to do. And so when that happened, and my marriage fell apart in a day, by the way, it was rebuilding time. And it was rebuilding time for me. It was rebuilding time for my finances. It was rebuilding time really for my entire life. So I spend my time continuing that journey. I get up in the morning and I make myself a wonderful breakfast from scratch with whatever, whole foods I've happened to acquire. And I take 2 to 3 walks a day because that helps control one's glucose. And then I have different hobbies and volunteering I do. I'm actually a certified leadership coach, and I volunteer with Rutgers University. So I'm about to start my next cohort of graduate students that I'm going to coach through whatever they're going through, for the next semester. I take care of family. I have a father who needs extra care, so I do that. And I really enjoy my life. I go to events where I do painting and crafting, and I go to book clubs, and and I take trips. I take trips. I went earlier this year to Indonesia. Chelsea, I have been to South Africa to see an art exhibit. That was the only reason I went. And I did not care. It was worth every single mile.
This is such a vibe. So we call this show Just Getting Good because I think for a lot of, we're sort of always taught to internalize this very ageist narrative about what our best years are and when we're sort of peaking. And by the way, I must say, if you feel like you peaked in high school or college, like take me to therapy, because that's not sustainable. What year did you feel like, or what age did things start getting good for you?
Well, it's interesting because I thought about this. When I was 30, I felt like an adult. When I turned 40, I felt like a woman.
Ooh.
When I turned 50, I feel like a goddess. And I am so looking forward to what 60 is going to feel like. Because I think I'm entering into what I seriously call my Maya Angelou, Eartha Kitt, Toni Morrison years, because they were magnificent. They were great when they were younger, but there was something about the power that they accessed in their mid to later years that I don't think that we truly comprehend. And between those three women, like, they are my aging with purpose role models, because as they aged, they became even more authentically themselves and even less interested in dealing with a world that did not want to deal with them as they were.
Yes.
And so the answer to the question is that it's getting better every day.
The number of times I have watched that interview with Eartha Kitt in her garden when she's probably in her 60s,
yes, when she's like, compromise for what?
What compromise?
For what?
Now, you mentioned that your marriage fell apart in a day after 24 years of marriage. And I know that involved financial infidelity.
Yes.
Could you take us through a little bit what happened, if you're comfortable?
Sure, absolutely. And when I tell people this, it's one of those things like they're like, what? Yeah, I was home, working from home, as one does at that time period, and got a call on our landline, because we still had one who does that. But got a call on our landline, and it was, the credit card company. I won't say the name, but it was a credit card company, and they were calling me about a fraud alert on my credit card. Problem was, I didn't have this credit card, and I was like, I don't own this credit card, so must be some fraud, whatever, somebody, shut it down, keep it moving. And they're like, okay, thank you, because the activity was not in your pattern. And my ex-husband was also working from home, and I guess he heard me because he came kind of running, and he said, I'll handle it. And he tried to take the phone out of my hand, and I was like, I'm sorry, where did he do that at? No, it's just somebody opened up a credit card in my name. It's fraud. I'm going to tell them to close it and go on with the rest of my day. And that's when he said to me, he's like, I did it. I opened up the credit card. And I looked at him and I said, you do realize that's a crime, right? You can go to jail for that. That's credit card fraud.
Yeah.
And when I tell you, I was trying to figure it out. And I spent most of the morning trying to figure it out because it made no sense. As far as I knew, we were both financially solvent, responsible adults who had built up,
both working
and still working, and it built up I thought was a substantial net worth together over the last 25 years. And then he just kept spinning and lying, and I was like, well, help me understand why you had to open up a credit card in my name. I don't get it. What have you been doing? And he said, well, I have some credit card debt. It's like, a credit card debt that you have to open up. So essentially, by the back and forth and him kind of saying, me asking questions, then me going to check his bank account and running his credit report because I'm like, oh, we are way past the trust, but not verify.
Can I ask, did you already have access to all of his accounts, or did you make him give you access to check that?
Well, I knew all of his passwords.
Okay.
And I could run his credit report because I knew his Social Security and I knew where all the places he lived. It wasn't hard to do once I decided that I was going to do it.
Right.
And so, I ran his credit report, and then I went back to him and I said, so you told me that you only had like $15,000 in credit card debt and you were clearing that off. And he's like, yeah, I told you. What's the issue? I'm sorry I did it, but what's the issue? I said, okay, but if that's the case, why does your credit report say that you have $137,000 in credit card debt? And his response was, you ran my credit report? He was supposed to have...
Oh my God.
We had a deal where we each kept for because we had pretty much separate finances. We each kept out $50,000 in our respective
checking
savings accounts for family emergencies. It was sacrosanct. It was like the fund that never gets touched because when ish goes bad, we each have our $50,000 if the family's in trouble. So I was like, because one of the things I asked him was, well, if you got into this credit card debt, why didn't you, use your $50,000? We could have talked about it, et cetera. And he's like, well, I said, did you use that? He's like, of course not. I'd never touch that. That's family money, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay.
Was that true?
No.
Oh my
opened
God.
up, I opened it. I logged on to his accounts, and it was down to, I think, $800.
800 in savings?
Yeah. I was like, I think maybe between both of them, maybe about $2,000.
Oh my God.
And so I was like, well, where did the money go? And so he admitted to gambling, and I say that in quotes. But then it was also, and by the time we got to this point, I stood in our kitchen, which we had lovingly remodeled to be gorgeous. I mean, I still kind of miss that house. And I looked at him and I said, we're done, right? There's no coming back from this. We're done. I had known him since I was 13 years old. I met him when I was 13. We were married by the time I was 24, and we were divorced by the time I was 48. In a day, we were done. I was like, there's no way we're coming back from this. So.
Okay, so a couple questions.
Feel
first
free.
Of all, I am so sorry you went through that, first and foremost. That I know you were done in a day, but that must have been devastating still.
It was.
Was it a gambling addiction?
Well, I can only say what he told me. But I can also say what the women who came out of the woodwork when he could no longer support their lifestyle also told me.
Oh my God. I was going to say it's either gambling or other women.
Or both.
Or both. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Now, okay, so many questions. Now, did he try to fight to keep the marriage together? No. What
he did ask me to do was to delay filing for divorce until our son got out of college. And I said, absolutely not.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Now, that is a huge amount of financial infidelity, and you were still able to retire 10 plus years before the average age.
Yeah, and I didn't even tell you about the tax fraud.
Tell me about the tax fraud. Tell me about the tax fraud.
Well, the tax fraud was a couple of years after we got divorced, and I had been living on my own, and because our last joint tax return was 2017. And, the IRS has a couple of years to find you, right?
Yeah.
And so they found us in 2019, 2020 that we owed collectively about $32,000 in taxes. And I was like, I don't understand this. But what he hadn't disclosed was that part of his debt was taking money out of his 401k. So he'd taken distributions from his 401k. And because he didn't want me to know, he did not report that on our joint tax return, making me party to a tax fraud. Yeah.
Now, did you get cleared of that?
Oh, yes. I called him up And the first thing he said was, well, won't the IRS leave you alone if you pay your half?
Your half?
Your half. Yeah, so you can imagine the words that came out of my mouth after that. And then I basically said, you know what? I said, I'm not paying this, but I will tell you what. I said, which one of us can afford to have the IRS freeze our assets? Which one of us? I guarantee you that it's not me.
Wow.
So I guarantee you that if the IRS freezes my assets and your assets, I will still make my rent next month.
Now,
he paid it on like about 3 or 4 different credit cards.
Now, did he face criminal charges for any of this?
No, he did. I did not. Honestly, because I didn't want to put my son's father in jail.
That's fair.
So I didn't bring charges against him. I did make him close the credit card, return the cash advance, because that was the trigger for the credit card company that the behavior was out of whack. Because
Yes.
I don't take cash advances on credit cards. And he took a cash advance on that credit card, and that was the trigger for them that this was off.
Okay, but so how did you, so I assume you filed immediately, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, walk me through a little bit of just like the financial extrication of yourself to make it so that you were not on the hook for any of this and you could, still secure your own nest egg.
Right. Well, the first thing I did, and literally, again, in a day, I left my house that afternoon. I texted a good girlfriend of mine who had been through a divorce where there was financial infidelity involved. And she had been cleaned out by her ex-husband, unfortunately. And so I was like, Lee, I need to talk to you. And she's like, absolutely. I left my house. I drove to like the parking lot of a local supermarket. I'm not even joking. I was like, here's the deal. And she was like, are you done? Are you getting out? I said, absolutely. I said, who did you use? She told me her attorney's name. I said, would you recommend him? She said, absolutely. I said, done. If he's good enough for you, he's good enough for me. So this was a Thursday. I remember it. It was April 13th, 2018. And I contacted him the next day. I spoke to him on that Monday or Tuesday. He had a retainer by that week. And 6 months later, I was divorced. How I got out of it, I think largely was because the majority of our finances were separate.
Okay.
We had one joint savings account for household stuff, but usually like the family vacation. We had one joint baby brokerage account that I had started, and then I added him on. But everything else, and we had the house, that was our joint asset, but everything else was separate. And so it made it easier to extricate myself. Because we had been together for so long and we kind of started out, together. From a retirement perspective, our assets were relatively the same, although he has a pension and I regret that I didn't go after it, but that's a thing for another day. And honestly, after I told my attorney, he was like, well, our goal is for you to walk away with all of your assets and none of the debt, and also a sufficient amount of your joint asset to compensate you for the marital assets that he dissipated.
Hell yeah.
So, and I, again, remember I said we were investing together since we were 23 because he and I are the same age. So I probably calculated lost marital assets anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million in what he did. Yeah.
Because it's not just the cash amount; it's all the unrealized gains.
You got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is this man going to be working until he dies?
I don't care.
Neither do I, but it's fun to picture.
I have no idea.
Jesus.
Well, it's funny because when we first got married, he said, I want to retire at 56. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
we can make this the family goal. And when I tell you I am a mission and focused oriented person,
yes,
I got a subscription to Money Magazine. I had a subscription to the Tightwad Gazette, which, if you know what that is, you're old. I mean, I used to like do our budgets and, and the spreadsheets and the whole thing. And I would look at our 401k offerings to make sure that they were aligned. If he had better of this, then he should invest in that. Yeah. I mean, the reason that he had as much money as he had, as much money as he walked away with, is largely because of the
you.
foundation that I set up for in our 20s.
Now, a couple things. One, truly speaks to the stupidity of a man that he was doing all of that while you had all of his passwords and all of his, obviously part of that is just a horrendous betrayal of trust because he knew you trusted him so implicitly. But also, come on, if you're going to be, essentially embezzling from your own marriage for years on end to fund to bankroll days in Atlantic City and, a bunch of.
I think his preferred spot was Philadelphia, actually.
Philadelphia, not even AC.
Yeah.
Now, are you okay with sharing numbers?
Sure.
Financially? What was your net worth when you decided to retire?
When I decided to retire, let me see. It was, I'm trying to remember the number, between 3.3 million and 3.2.
Okay, and does that include equity in your home? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, my investable assets were 2.8, 2.9 at the time.
So your drawdown is what, like close to?
My drawdown is roughly $100,000.
I was going to say 100,000.
Yeah, and my budget is 120. I typically am in the 100 to 110 range a year.
This is a good reminder for the audience. We always talk about the numbers that it takes to retire. People think of a millionaire, they think of a really rich person. If you ever want to stop working, $1 million is just enough to live on, $40,000-$50,000 a year without, taking down your principal. But also, you started investing at early 20s. You would be truly shocked at the amount of wealth that you can build if you have, 30, 40 years to let money sit in the market. So it's both bigger and smaller than it seems. But
I will tell you that the true story is at the end of 2018, when my divorce was final and the dust had settled and I could actually kind of assess where I was, my net worth was 7 years ago, 1.2 million. That's all I had left. I mean, and I know people are going to be like, that's all, but that's all I had. That was all. And I was mad about it,
As you should be.
But 7 years later, today, as I sit here, it's 3.6.
How did you make that up?
I made it up by having, a job where I turbocharged my income. And by the time I retired, the last couple of years I retired, I was saving 73% of my net income on top of just maxing out anything I could get my hands on. Yeah. So 401k, HSA, the only thing I couldn't do was a Roth, and that, I'm going to tell you that story because but yeah, I mean, I had a brokerage account that I fed, like I don't even want to say, but I was probably putting in $50,000, $60,000 a year into that brokerage account.
Wow.
I had an advisor who knew my goals. His growth-oriented account. It was just consistency. And it was funny because in 2022, and I laugh at this now, my net worth went up by $21. $21 because the market
was
tanked.
Terrible.
The market tanked. That lost decade that they always talk about, that was my 30s. Okay. Yeah. But I kept consistent, but that the year in 2022 where my net worth went up $21, the next year it went up about $900,000. The year after that, about $400,000. So if I had, just said, "Oh, I can't," I wouldn't be sitting here retired. That's for damn sure.
What did you do for work?
I worked for a boutique HR firm,
okay.
And I was essentially the lead consultant We worked with Fortune 100, Fortune 200 companies. I was well compensated, but I also, they got their money out of me and then some. I was rolling out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning, basically going straight to my desk, and was looking up at 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
So when you say you like really turbocharged the amount that you were able to build your wealth in that 8-year period, 7-8 year period, it was just from saving more aggressively, not necessarily from like taking in a ton more money.
No, it was.
Okay.
It was taking in more. I mean, my income.
How did you grow? How did you have control over growing it like that?
Part of it was a little bit of luck, or a lot of, and being and establishing a relationship with my boss at the time, and she knowing that I could do what she needed me to do. And so when I got divorced, my base was probably like 125, 150. When I left that company, that job, my base was like 185.
Okay, and you had variable compensation as well each year?
Yeah,
okay.
The bonus in this particular job, or the commission for sales, because it was essentially a sales and consulting job, was
where
about.
You sold HR consultancies?
Yes.
Got it, okay.
And then you serviced it because you kind of
Right.
had to, eat what you killed. But it was, I made more in commission than I did in salary.
Okay.
So.
Got it. Which, that is a high income, but in the New York City area, it's not insane.
No.
Like,
yeah.
a base
I think
of
my
125
total
is,
compensation my last year was like 400.
that's really
So,
high. But
yeah.
again, I think it's important to note that was only a very small portion of your career. The rest of your career
Oh
was
yeah, the
quite a
rest
bit
of the
less.
year I was working for a nonprofit. I wasn't unfairly compensated.
But it wasn't like that.
No, it was not like that.
Now, do you feel like you were happy in your marriage before you found all of this out?
I think that, and this is the interesting part, I think that probably for the first 15 years, and then the last 5 years were challenged. The last 2 years were like, I'm like, what is, and the last year, I was like, are we headed to someplace really unfortunate? Like, it just, I couldn't pull the string of what was wrong. And
He really changed in his behavior?
Yeah.
Extremely common when men are committing any kind of infidelity.
Yeah. And so I think also, if I had to say one thing that really, in retrospect, kind of changed things, was when I was working for the company before this one. And I don't mind saying that company's name. I worked for IEEE, which is a global electrical electronics engineering nonprofit. So I was tapped to have IEEE pay for me to go to graduate school. And so they paid every single penny for me to go and get an MBA. And I think that it felt like it shifted something in my marriage. And my son was maybe like 10. We'd been married at that point like 15 years. Something felt like it shifted in retrospect when I was able to go and do that, and be tapped by my employer as somebody that they wanted to develop.
You think he was envious or resentful?
I don't know, because I gave up trying to figure out why he did what he did, because that's between him and his God, as I like to say.
True.
So, and actually at one point I did ask him, I was like, why did you do this? And almost like to me, like,
well, it was to you.
Yeah, to me. And because I'd always said, I was like, you know what, we can, I would say I would get divorced before I would cheat on you. And he'd look at me. I said, because here's in my thought that the urge or the inclination to cheat says that there's something very, very wrong in your marriage. And so
Totally.
You either need to fix that or get a divorce. I think he was deeply unhappy. When I asked him why, for example, he did the credit card fraud on me, and he said it was the easiest thing to do. He was faced
God.
with this and this problem, and he tapped into my good credit in order to solve for it.
I know you did it for your son and it was the right thing to do, but I must admit I'm a little sour that you never pressed criminal charges, because that is gross fraud committed against you. If it were
Yes.
anyone else, you would have taken them to court.
Yes. I would have let the credit card company take him to
Please
court.
do.
You know,
Are you dating?
I try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me
I
about
try.
it.
Well, it's been a part of the healing journey, because one of the things that I had to grapple with the end of my divorce, or the end of my marriage, was why him? Why did I choose him? And what was it in me? Because I think there was a little tiny part of myself that knew this. What was it in me that convinced myself that he was what I deserved, that he was the best I could do? And so when I got divorced, I found myself repeating those patterns
Yeah.
in my dating. And so I had to kind of pull myself back and say, okay, Anita, the most important and profound and intimate relationship you are ever going to have is with yourself. And you need to get right with yourself. You need to understand yourself. You need to really love yourself so that you can go out in the world with that understanding of who you are and what you're about. And protect that person, and so it's been hard to date. It's been hard to date because of that healing journey, and it's okay. Everybody's on it, but it's also been hard. I can't discount that I am 55 years old. I am financially independent. I am retired. I am well educated. I have multiple degrees. I have a career where I stood in front of CEOs and told them things that they did not want to hear, and they invited me back and paid me more. And so I had one gentleman who basically was like, you're intimidating. And it's like, am I? And there are a fair number of men my age who, they're just not ready. They are not where they need to be in order to have long-term potential in my life. I've had my hot girl summer romance, and the guy I dated, he was so sweet at the time. He was like, look, I know that I am your hot girl summer.
Was he younger, out of curiosity?
No, he's my age.
Okay.
He's, and he's like, I know I'm your hot girl summer. He was like, I'm just trying to last till September. He's like, and this past summer, because I had a really bad breakup in the summer, got my heart broken. But this has been my summer of discernment.
Okay.
So, it's been, it's not easy.
Taking your time.
It's not easy. It's not easy to find and pour into or kind of, nurture what I actually want. If I just want somebody to call, a partner or a boyfriend or whatever, that is not hard to find. But to have what I want, to have what I need, a true partner, to have what I deserve as myself, that's been harder to find, and that's okay, because the things that are worth having, they take time.
It sounds like from everything you've said so far that you are pretty unequivocally happier, more fulfilled, more embodied as a person post-divorce.
Yes. God, yes.
Do you feel like you have advice for women who maybe feel like what they're in relationship-wise is not the best version of what it could be, is not the best version of themselves, but it's not so bad that it necessarily feels like it has to end right now? What would your advice be to them?
Well, I would say well, let me think about this for a second.
Take your time.
I think that you have to assess realistically where your life is. I mean, I was not going to blow up my kid's life. So I was fortunate in a sense that my son was 17 when we got divorced. So he was kind of about to graduate from
Right.
high school. I have a different set of empathy for women who are like, my kid is in grade school or, et cetera. I completely get that. It probably has to be really, really bad to blow up your entire life and the life of your children, et cetera, for, and okay is okay. I would not necessarily recommend what I did, which I realized in retrospect I was doing. I was giving myself, although maybe it will work, I was giving myself um, momentary escapes from my life.
Really? How
Oh,
so?
yeah. So I started something I called the solitude and silence weekends, where I kid you not, I would leave work on a Friday, go to a local like Marriott Residence Inn where they had a refrigerator and the whole thing. I'd bring a pile of books and I'd bring groceries and I would just be there for the weekend. And then I would go to work on Monday, and then I go home Monday evening. I trademarked them as my solitude and silence weekends. I told the Marriott people that they needed to market it to overstressed working
Yes.
mothers because and people were like, oh, well, where did you go? I was like, about 30 minutes from my house. I did not need a trip. I needed to be out of my house.
How old was your son at this point?
About 10,
Okay.
10, 11.
Kind of a peak annoying years in some cases.
So, and then that expanded to long weekends abroad. So I would get on a plane on a Wednesday and fly to London for like 4 days and see a show or go to a museum and sort of in a pub, and then I'd come home like Monday or Tuesday.
Wow.
And yeah.
Sorry, please.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, did you perceive or understand it as you kind of trying to microdose escaping your own life?
No, I did not.
Really? That is interesting.
I thought of it as I just need a break. I need to recharge because my life was my son has special needs. And we both had very demanding jobs. And I am a dear introvert. And I lived with two extroverts. So at the time, I was saying, I just need quiet because I'm not going to get it. They were both like, first thing in the morning, turn on the TV. There was noise all the time. And so I, in my mind, told the story of, I just need quiet. I just need, 4 days to just quiet. Once I started getting on planes and getting out passports, it kind of felt more like I was escaping my life. Now, but to your question about advice for those women, I would say, you've got to nurture you because that kind of like just itching dissatisfaction, that's progressive. I started out 30 minutes from my house and ended up across the Atlantic. It's progressive. So it's only going to become more of a drumbeat in your soul that something is off, something is wrong. And you don't want to wake up, 70 going, my God, I spent all those years not in touch with myself, denying what I knew and ignoring what my own, mind was essentially whispering, saying, and probably screaming at me by it gets to a certain point. So I would say nurture yourself in some way. If you are not going to leave that situation, find ways, however they work for you, to reestablish and deepen that relationship with yourself. Because if you stay, it is going to make it better because you're going to be better because you're pouring into yourself. If you find out that, this is not going to work, I think you will be in a better position to do that with grace and a true sense of this. Not all things are meant to last. And that's okay. You are welcome, as a matter of fact, I'm coming to get, and that's where a community of beautiful women around you, and I experienced that even going through my divorce, where I had just briefly mentioned to one of my friends that I didn't know how I was going to pack up my house because I lived in that house for 24 years. And my ex-husband was going off on some like Caribbean vacation and whatever. And I was going to pack up the house or pack up my part of the house. And when I tell you it's going to make me cry, but two of my friends, the one I said it to, called another one of my friends. Every single night for the week that he was gone, they showed up at my house with packing supplies, pizza. They bought tunes. I mean,
What are tunes?
Basically playlists to pack by, and yeah, I'm sorry, I'm old, and I remember it was just, they made it such an empowering, joyful,
yes,
truly joyful thing. And I remember like my girlfriend standing in front of my pantry and she's like, how are we splitting up the stuff in the pantry? And I was like, we're splitting up the stuff in the pantry? She's like, damn right we are. Half of these paper towels are yours. So and when my ex came back and he came in the house and he looked at all of the boxes that were packed and my stuff, I was essentially packed to go. And he had no idea how I'd gotten it done.
I think there's also something I often think about, bad relationships is, even if the woman says, I want to try and make it work, I often so wonder, is that everything external to her that says that,
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's a role to be of the voice. And it's not a yes or no question. It's just, is there a role to play of, the person who's saying it's not bad if you don't?
Yeah, well, there is. And I will tell you without getting into too many specifics because it's not my journey. I recently helped someone who is going through a really bad spot in her marriage. But the first question we had to grapple with was actually, could she afford to leave?
Yes.
And I don't think that question should be discounted because in my experience with a number of the women that it's not so much do women want to leave. The first thing they've got to and then blowing it up is also, can they actually afford it? Part of the reason why I was able to get out of my marriage as quickly as I did is because I had money to do it.
Yes.
And I had money to hire that attorney and get out of there and get my new home. And, but the person that I was helping, we very quickly, by the time I finished just I said to her, come over to my house. We'll whiteboard it. We'll figure it out. At least you'll know where you are. There's no way.
You know what weighs on me, though, is the number of women statistically who were earning what you were earning or more and didn't even have the passwords to their own accounts. It's one thing to not have the money because you don't have the money. It's another thing to not have the money because you can't even access the money.
Yes. Because you had a question about, what's the most important thing you've learned about money?
Don't worry.
And so money is a tool to buy freedom.
Yes.
And people who don't want you to have that money are saying to you that they don't want you to have freedom.
As kind of a last question I had before we get into our rapid fire, from the outside, you're single, totally financially independent, you live, your absolute best life on a day-to-day basis, retired at 54, 53?
53,
53. Own your home, travel whenever you want, read the books you want, do your hobbies, do all of this. From the outside, it's like, wow, you were living the dream of every Nancy Meyers movie, right? Well, it's true. A 50-something woman living her absolute best life. Do you feel like, what do you feel are the key ingredients to that? Money obviously being one, having your own finances. But are there any other things that, are more maybe accessible that you could say to a woman if you want to be living in a way that is fulfilled, embodied, all of these things by the time you're my age? Here's what I would encourage you to do now.
Get to know yourself. Really get to know yourself. And get to know yourself gently. Because I find at least younger women, and I did it too, the way that we speak to ourselves about ourselves is really unfortunate. We put ourselves down. We don't really give ourselves grace and the benefit of the doubt. We expect ourselves to be perfect. We expect ourselves to figure it out for everybody. And we're not looking for somebody to help us figure it out. Because, so I would say, first off, get to know yourself and be good with you, deeply good with you, and recognize that that's changeable. That's not a static. The person that you were at 23, that person, you don't need to carry that. There's no point in trying to carry that person. That person doesn't exist, and that's okay, because look who exists now. So I would say, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, go inward. You are an amazing person to get to know. So get to know you.
I lied. I have one last question before our rapid fire. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship to aging physically and visually, especially in the context of dating?
Sure.
Talk to me about that.
Well, one of the things that happened post-divorce, and being able to kind of fully tap into myself and be about myself, is that I went on a really holistic wellness journey.
Okay.
Mentally, better living through therapy. Get you some. There's a lot of people in the world who did not get the therapy they needed 20 years ago, and it is showing up now.
Yes.
Better living through therapy, better living through leveraging, my resources. And there's a fun story about that, I'll tell you, and the girlfriends. So I had some health challenges, and I still have them, but I had some health challenges. And one of my girlfriends, who I adore, she's like, "You need a concierge doctor."
What is that?
Oh, a concierge doctor? A concierge doctor is a doctor that you hire, who is essentially your doctor on call at all times. And I was like, "I need a concierge doctor?" I said, "I can't afford a concierge doctor." She's looked at me. She's like, "Bitch, I know how much you make." Yes, you can. That's what she literally said. And I said to her, I was like, and then I said, and she goes, "It's a handbag." I said, "It's a handbag?" I said, "Hermes?" She's like, "No, Louis." I said, "Oh, so it's really not that bad." She's like, "I told you." So she's like, "I'll send you my concierge doctor's name." So I hired her concierge doctor, and he has been my doctor for the last 4 years. And it's been really life-changing. When I had a health crisis and I was briefly hospitalized, I was in Pennsylvania and in the emergency room. And so I texted him, what my issues were. And by the time the emergency room doctor came out to see me, he goes, "I've already spoken to your doctor. He's given your background. He's told us what." So and then after I got home, he came to my house, sat in my living room, and said, "Anita, we must do something about what's going on." He said, "Because this can never happen again. You were very close to something that you couldn't recover from."
Wow.
And so...
Is it okay do you mind sharing what it was, or no?
My blood pressure was stroke high.
Oh, wow.
I was on stage giving a speech, giving a talk, and I felt faint. I was just like, whoa. And I apologized to the room full of people that I'd missed a step. And I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I must have, just misspoke." And I was like, and they were like, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." I was like, "Maybe I'll just sit down." I sat down, finished giving the talk. I'm not even joking. Finished giving the talk. Went back up to my hotel room and called one of my colleagues and said, "I don't think I'm going to make the afternoon client meetings. I'm feeling a little woozy. I'm just going to go lay down. And she's like, what happened? And I told her, she's like, hospital now. And as it turned out, my blood pressure was literally stroke high. I was this close to having a stroke.
And did they not catch that at your physical?
It was several months after.
Got it. Okay, so it had shot up in that amount.
No, I had a wholesale failure of my blood pressure medication.
Wow.
And so, so the point of that though is making the determination that what I wanted, because that was what he asked me. He's like, where do you want your health to be? What is it that you want? And I said, I want, because I was about 52 when I hired him. I said, I want that when I'm 82, I can get up off the floor if I need to. I can live independently. And I've always done this, I was like, yes, there are things that I want in the present, but I'm not necessarily doing it only for present Anita. I'm doing it for future Anita.
Yes.
What is future Anita going to need from present Anita today in order to be what I want her to be? So that's how I approached it. And so we approached it from a wellness perspective. I started putting things in place. Since the day I got divorced, I've lost 50 pounds. Yeah.
Look at you.
Since I retired, I've lost 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, is that a dedicated effort, or is it just sort of a natural byproduct of making all these better choices?
It is a little bit of both.
Okay.
I am essentially a business strategy and systems person. So I looked at the business of the life of Anita, which I also encourage people to do if they're thinking about what they want their lives to be. Think about kind of your life as the business of your life and what do you want it to be?
Yeah.
So I looked at that and I said, okay, what can I put in place? What habits can I do that will be seamless, that will give me the outcomes that I'm looking for? One of those things was just freeing up time, saying, I'm not going to do this. This is not healthy for me anymore. Another was implementing the walks and just, I've got to get out and walk. I've got to get out and move. Do
you feel better in your body now than you did 20 years ago?
So much better.
Really love it.
So much better.
It's good to hear.
Yeah, I'm kinder to my body. I listen to my body a lot more. And I'm almost like, when my body's like, good job. Like when I was coming here and I was walking up all the stairs and I realized that I did not have to hold on to the railing to get up the stairs. I was like, yeah, go ahead, body, do your thing. I walked up like 4 flights of stairs and didn't have to hold on to a railing.
Now, in terms of the sort of the visual element of aging, do you feel a pressure to look a certain way?
No, mainly because I think, and this is, okay, so I have always been very, very smart.
Smart?
And I've always been very, very smart. I was the kid who was the straight A student. I won a scholarship to my boarding school. I went to Stanford. I did all the things. I've always been very, very smart. And so I grew up, good, bad, or indifferent, as not being viewed as particularly pretty. That was not my currency. So because my currency wasn't ever really my looks, I don't feel this pressure to maintain a standard that I never had in the first place.
Do you feel like that's part of what makes aging even more difficult for some women, is because they felt like this major currency is now being taken from them?
Yes. And it's hard to let go of someone who no longer exists. It's kind of the Betty Draper problem.
Yes. Well, she wanted to die in her 30s and
exactly.
she did.
It's the
Smoking
Betty Draper
all those
problem.
Cigarettes.
And yeah, so what I do feel, and it's interesting, I feel actually more beautiful today than I ever have. I feel more beautiful. I feel sexier. I feel more sexual and more interesting.
Hot girl summer.
Yeah, hot girl summer. I really did. I had a hot girl summer.
I love it.
What I do is, in terms of beauty, is I think of it more as honoring the skin I'm in.
Yeah.
Not in trying to look how I looked on my wedding day or look how I looked 10 years ago or 15 years ago. If I am kind and cherishing of the face I have and the hair I have and, you know, the body I have, so that it can do things and it can feel good and it can move and, you know, and it can dance, then beautiful. I take care of myself, but not for the purposes of I want to still look good to men or I need to go out in the world looking a certain way. I take care of myself because I deserve it. I'm worthy of it. This is the skin I'm in. This is the body that has carried me. Why should the skin be dry? The skin should be moist and taken care of.
Surely should. You know, it's interesting. I didn't think of it in those terms, but what you're saying makes total sense. It's like if that was never really the currency you were operating on, there's not nearly the same level of loss. And even if by some objective standard, an extremely physically beautiful person is still the top 99th percentile at, you know, 50 whatever as they were at 20 whatever, the shift of what that means societally, the value that confers, the sort of doors that it opens is different enough that is a major loss.
Yeah.
So,
sorry. No, and what was interesting too, though, is I also want to be clear. I'm not saying that beautiful people aren't smart, because they are. You know,
they can for sure.
But also, what's interesting to me is that when I say, for example, you know, that wasn't my currency, or that wasn't my girlfriend's. One of my best girlfriends, she's like, "Have you looked in the mirror recently?" She's like, "You're stunning," and I'm like, no, I'm like, other women in my family. I always used to say I come from a family of very beautiful women, and I was the smart one. And they're like, no, I've seen your, yeah. But it's also how you frame it. And it's also what were you praised for?
Exactly.
I wasn't praised for, oh, you look so pretty in that dress. I was praised for, way to go on that report card. And it's I think also for me, because we didn't talk about this, but part of my journey is I've been a Buddhist for 20 plus years. And, you know, Buddhism also places an emphasis on it is all transitory. You can never step, there's a Buddhist expression, you will never step in the same river twice. Even if you step in the same river, you are not stepping in the same river. It has moved. The current has moved. The water has shifted. It is not where you stepped the first time. So this idea of holding on to a prior version of myself or being afraid of a future version of myself does not jive with my faith path. So I'm in the sense of, this is the body that I have. This is the precious human rebirth that I have. And I need to honor that. And I need to honor that today at 55. I need to honor the person who, by probably all measures, married the wrong man. But, you know, she was young and she had to learn. Keep living, as the elders say. And I need to honor the person who will hopefully be 85 and 95 and hopefully have amazing wisdom and independence. And so that's why I don't think people saying, oh, you don't look your age, I don't really think that's a compliment. I don't mind. I'm 55. If I look 55, okay, cool. Yes. Every year.
Correct.
I've never been one to kind of fib my age. I'm like, every single year, I'm happy to have it.
And you earned it.
I earned it. So, you know, and I don't prescribe to this idea that you have to be less because you are older. I think you actually get a permission from the universe to be more.
So I have my rapid fire questions for us to close out. What is something about aging we don't talk about enough?
Purposeful aging allows you to step fully into your power. And we talk about all the physical things, but we don't talk about how you can really manifest magnificence when you step into purposeful aging.
Well said. What is something that you enjoy about aging that you didn't expect to?
How comfortable I am in my skin. And one of the things, the best things about aging is the group of girlfriends I have, some of whom have known me for 15, 20, 35 years, and we're all aging together. And it's, we say, I love you. We talk about like, our Golden Girls camp compound, because we don't want a house. We want like individual homes or duplexes,
Yeah.
But that's not something, that's something I didn't expect, that tribe of women that we have chosen to go through life together as friends, and we're aging together. And so it's been great.
Statistically, why women are so much happier as they age than men, by the way, because we have friends.
Mm-hmm.
Male loneliness crisis, why is that women's responsibility to solve? Make some friends.
Yeah. Please.
Please go make some friends.
Make some friends.
How much better would the world be if men had good, healthy friendships?
Mm-hmm.
What is the most important thing that you've learned about money in the past few decades?
Honestly, it's not how uncomplicated it is. Now, that's not to say our relationship with money, why we spend money, why we don't, whatever. That can be very complicated internally, and like I said, better living through therapy. But money itself is not complicated. It has no purpose beyond being a tool. It's a tool for buying stuff. It's a tool, and buying services. But what it really is a tool for freedom and a tool for buying your time. And I think one of the reasons why some people want to make money seem very complicated is they don't want you to have the real benefit of the money, which is freedom, choices, and options. And sometimes that can include your employers, by the way. But it's not that complicated. We make it sometimes in our head a lot more complicated, but it really is, how much are you making? How much are you spending? Can you create some margin? Can you take that little bit of margin and invest it and create more margin? And as that grows, you have more options, more choices, more things that you can do with your time, including support causes that matter to you. So that's what I would say. I mean, we make money to be a lot more complicated than it really is.
What's the most important thing you've learned about relationships in the past few decades?
I would say the most profound and intimate relationship you will ever have is with yourself. And if that is not right, if you don't know how to honor that, to defend that, to love that, then you are not going to be able, more than likely, to sustain a long-term healthy relationship. I believe there are a lot of unhealed people in the world.
Many in our government.
Yes. And your job in a relationship is to not be one of them.
Yes.
And to not allow someone to be in particularly a romantic relationship with you if they haven't done the work on themselves. You can honestly say, it's okay to say, I love you, go in peace.
And lastly, what advice would you give to a 30-something woman who is currently single, without kids, and not where she wants to be financially?
Okay. So I have a business background, so I'm going to, kind of say this from a business perspective. What's your why? And why is it a problem for you that your finances are not where you want them to be? What does that actually mean, and why does it matter? Because it's a problem, and 99.99% of problems in the world are not the Kobayashi Maru. They have a solution, and if you get that reference, we can be friends. So, face it head on, and, call me, call a friend who will take out the whiteboard, take out the calculator, and help you figure it out. When I retired, I created a business plan for the business known as Anita's Retirement. I have a mission statement for my retirement. I have a strategy. I have goals. I have pillars. I'm the only customer, and my 100% satisfaction must be assured. So I'm not joking. I have a business plan called the business known as Anita's Retirement, because I wanted to figure out, what do I want out of this next phase of my life? So I would say, don't run from it. You've said, and the beautiful thing is also, I would say, realize the opportunity that you have. You do not have those quote unquote societal markers that tell you where you are and what you should be doing. Because when I was in my mid 30s, I was consumed by husband and kid. The beautiful thing about your situation is you don't have those markers to hold you down. You get to decide for you what your why is. My why was, for 24 years, was husband and kid. My life got infinitely better when my why became me. And so that's what I would say. I mean, I would say face it head on, understand your why, deal with the strategy of how you want to address it, and come up with tactics that you can revise and revisit if necessary. When it gets hard, which it will, remember your why. And for me, future me is a great why. I don't think about, I'm in my 30s and I don't know how to deal with this. When you are in your 50s, whatever's not working for you in your 30s is going to really not be working for you in your 50s. And future you, love future you enough to be the present you that solves the problem.
Anita, this has been a delight. I would love one of my bucket list items is go on some sort of European walking tour with Anita and learn even more. This has been truly, truly so wonderful. If our audience would love to learn more about you, can they find you anywhere online?
Yes, I have a little baby Instagram.
Yay.
It's the most boring Instagram. You're just going to see me posting about, my day and possibly a glass of wine, and that's about
Hell
it.
Yeah. Wait, let's all go follow. What is give us the handle?
It's Annie on a good day. And that's that's underscored.
We'll link that in the description. And thank you again, Anita, for joining us and
sharing.
Thank
you for having me.
Oh, it's been a delight. And thank you guys all for watching. And we will see you back here on the next episode of Just Getting Good. Bye.
Bye.